बॉटल में रखा पानी लाइव हो गए.
Oh, I am live, is it? Okay. Okay, I'm waiting for Insta to go live.
You are live.
Alright, I am live and I am super excited about today's cooking event because Diwali is one of my favorite festivals of all the festivals that happen through the year. I don't know, it's like childhood memories, it's the prospect of getting gifts, it's about meeting the entire family, it's about all the Diwali goodies and everything like that. So I really love Diwali. I hope I am clearly audible and visible both on Insta and on Facebook and wherever else this is live streaming, I think YouTube as well. Now, if you see, the show is called Own Your Body. One reason for that, we at Thrive really, what we do is we work on reversing chronic diseases, and we know that is only possible like if you have obesity or if you have diabetes. So it doesn't really matter what disease you are diagnosed with. The only way you can really reverse that is if you take complete control of your body, if you take complete control of whatever you're putting in, and then based on that, we start seeing the changes that are needed in terms of your health. So that's why the show is called Own Your Body, even though it's a cooking show. What we're doing today is we are going to make really yummy, healthy Diwali snacks. Now, typically, so India is again such a huge country with so many different cuisines. We stuck to working with the cuisines that we are most familiar with, and most Diwali pictures also have these food pictures. So there is chakli, um, and there is karanji, you know, that boat shaped thing, and then we are making besan ke laddu, and then we are making shankarpali, which is those tiny diamond shaped things. Four things that are usually typically deep fried or loaded with sugar or loaded with a lot of unhealthy stuff which would impact your body negatively. So we're going to start showing you how to make healthy versions of that. I have my team here in the background. You can't see them on camera, but you might see one hand coming in from somewhere. So don't freak out. It's real human beings who are there in the show. All right. So what we're going to start with first is we're going to learn how to make really healthy chakli. Okay. Now the most of the ingredients in a chakli, that's the rice and the chana dal and the urad dal. I'm going to talk more in detail about what we're going to do with these ingredients. But most of the ingredients in a chakli are actually healthy. The one thing that makes a chakli really unhealthy is the refined oil that is used in it. Are we streaming on Facebook? Are we live? Yeah, right? Okay. Do we have enough people joining in? Should I wait before I start off on Facebook?
8 people have joined.
8 people have joined? Okay, that's good. We can start. Alright, so the only reason why we would consider traditionally made chakli unhealthy is because it's deep fried in refined vegetable oil, or even if you're using cold pressed oils. The problem with vegetable oils is they're very high in something called as polyunsaturated fatty acids. And these polyunsaturated fatty acids are what are triggering insulin resistance and the entire epidemic of diabetes in today's world, right? So India is the #1 leader in diabetes. It's a shame. We could have been leaders in many other things, but we are leading the world in diabetes. And one of the primary reasons is the high level of vegetable oil consumption that's going on in our diets. Most of us have replaced healthy saturated animal fats with vegetable oils, which is why we're seeing this very high levels of insulin resistance. So the only thing that makes a chakli really unhealthy is that it's deep fried in oil. And what we're going to do today is instead of deep frying, we're going to use another technique of making it, which if you're smart enough, you would have guessed is this oven. But we're going to use another technique of making it so that we steer away from the oil, but we still get to enjoy yummy, crunchy chaklis. All right. Now to begin with, and this recipe is my mom's super secret recipe, which is not so secret because she shared it with all of us. But she used to make the flour also for chakli at home. It's in Marathi. It's called bhazani, which comes from the word bhazani, which is to roast. But every ingredient in this is roasted and then it's ground together into a flour. So you start with rice. For those of you who have registered for this event and who've left your email IDs, we will be sending a recipe booklet with detailed proportions. But you start off with rice, which you roast, and then you use chana dal. So if you're using one measure of rice, so let's say if you're using 100 grams of rice, then you use 50 grams of chana, and then you use half of that, so half of the chana dal, so 12.5 grams of urad dal, And then again half of that. So what's half of 12.5? Like 6.75 grams of moong dal. So my mom would measure with katoris and with glasses, not really with weighing scale. But that's the proportion that she would stick to. So first comes rice, half of that is chana dal, half of that is urad dal, half of that is moong dal. And these are the four main ingredients that she would use to make this flour. If you're somebody who's plant-based, if you're somebody who's vegan, who doesn't eat animal protein at all, this is a pretty good recipe because it has three dals in it, which are high in protein, and then it has rice also. So the rice and dal together will complement each other and will give you all the essential 9 amino acids. Now it really depends on how good your body is at absorbing these amino acids from plant-based sources. But if you're absolutely not considering animal foods in your diet, this is a pretty good snack to have. Okay, so what you do for that is you roast, you stick on the gas to roast, step one, and then you roast all of these ingredients separately. So I'm just going to show you what rice looks like once it's roasted. You see it's kind of transparent now, right? It starts becoming really opaque, and so you roast it on a low flame, not too high, because we don't want it to burn. And anybody watching this show right now, if you have any questions, any comments, please put them in the comment section. Any questions at all? Which rice is good? Is it basmati? Is it 𝒚𝒐𝒖𝒓, whatever? Because the team is sitting here and it's looking at the comments, and they'll tell me the comments so I can answer your questions live as you're asking them. Alright? So yeah, so this is basically dry roast all the rice and all the dal. There is not a drop of oil in here. It's just the heated kadai with dry rice in it. It takes a little while, but it's totally worth it. Don't increase the flame to too high because that will burn parts of it without really roasting it evenly. Okay? And which rice should you use? Well, I would recommend sticking to your local varieties because rice like basmati. So basmati is not a natural variety that's grown here in India, right? Basmati is a highly GMO'd grain. So I would recommend that you use a local indigenous variety. So in India, I mean in Pune, we get this rice called Indrayani, we get 𝒚𝒐𝒻, all of these are local Maharashtrian varieties. Up north, you will have your own local varieties. I know in Hyderabad and Andhra Pradesh, Sona Masuri is a local variety. So pick your local varieties of your rice, pick local indigenous grains, look for organically grown rice as much as possible because otherwise the pesticide toxic load is going to be just too high. Alright, so if you notice now the rice is changing its color. I don't know, maybe the camera is too far away from you guys, but it's changing color, and from being transparent it's become a nice opaque color. And then we just want to wait until a nice roasted flavor comes from it. So what made you guys sign up for this event and watch this right now? What brought you here? Are you like looking for healthy recipes, or were you just interested in a cooking event? What is it like? Let us know in the comments, and or like even what is your favorite Diwali memory? Right? For me, my favorite part about Diwali is this day of Diwali, which we call 𝒕𝒂𝒗𝒐𝒓, which is Bhai Dooj in Hindi. And all my cousin brothers, all my brothers come and give me gifts. So that's my favorite day of Diwali. And how are you guys spending your Diwali in COVID times? Are you meeting your family? Are you doing virtual Diwali? Okay, so the rice now is roasted. Again, I can't show this to you because the camera is a little far off, but it's become brownish in color. Not completely dark brown, but just a very light beige brown. And I'm taking this out. Okay, so this is what you do. You roast each of these ingredients, at the rice and then the chana dal, the moong dal, and the urad dal. You roast all of these together, and then you mix them. So I already did some of this in the morning, so I have these roasted ingredients. We'll just bring it closer to the camera so you can see what it looks like. But that's the roasted mix, and yeah, it takes two hands to show you that. That's the roasted mix of the dals and the rice. Now, after this, to add flavor, what we add is we also roast some coriander seeds. So dhania, okay, so this is dhania. We roast this also, dry roasted, and then we roast some red chilies. Again, the proportions and the exact measurements will be sent to you on your email. And then before I get started with the rest of the messy work, which is like making the dough, I'm just going to wear my apron because I don't like my dress being splattered with flours and powders. And that makes me look like a really professional chef. The only thing missing is my chef hat, which I don't have. Maybe we should do that for the next one. Alright, so this, like I showed you, these are the dals and the rice that's roasted together. And then you roast your dhania and you roast your dry red chilies also in that. And you mix it all together. And then you grind it. Now, typically, when we were kids and when my mom would do this, we would make this in bulk, right? Because you don't make just 3 chaklis for Diwali, you make a whole bunch which you can then distribute to your family and friends. So it would usually be like 2 or 3 kgs of all the dals and rice ground together, and then this would get ground in the local chakki. My local chakki guy would drive me out if I had sent him a katori of dal and rice to grind and give me. So we ground this in the mixer, and I have this flour. Okay, so this flour is a mix of all the rice and the dals and the dhania and the red chili powder. I have a really good mixer, a really efficient one. So I've managed to grind this into a fine flour. If you're making this in bulk, I would recommend getting this ground at a local chakki because you get a really fine powdered flour out of it. So this is the flour. Now what we do is we heat some water. Again, the proportion of water and the dough will be sent to you. Don't worry about that. We heat some water. We add the salt that you would need to taste. And you don't need to add chili powder in this chakli because those red chilies have already gone in. So water, salt, and then for flavor, I'm adding some ajwain, okay, so some 𝒂𝒗 in this. I really like the flavor of ajwain in chakli. Some people also add til if they want. You can add til, you can add jeera in this. It really is up to you what you want to add. If you want to make continental chaklis, you can add oregano and thyme, but it's really up to you. I wouldn't judge it, I wouldn't question you if you did that. But once the water is boiling, we add this flour. Okay, what this process does is, because of the heat, the starch in the rice kind of gets gelatinized partially. You close the lid and you keep it. This process in Marathi is called 𝒂𝒗𝒐𝒊𝒕𝒆, which is, if I had to do a direct translation to English, it would be boil remove. But I will not torture you with my terrible puns, and then we'll just wait for this to kind of cool down and get some heat into all the parts of the flour. While that is happening, I'm going to clear up the space, and I'm going to keep this here because we're going to need this for the next step. This is with what you make your chaklis. You might have the traditional one, which is like, you have to do round and round with your hand, which is what I had as a kid. And And then at this point, if you need some more water, you can sprinkle it on that, because you don't want a very stiff kadak dough. You want a slightly soft, malleable one. I'm going to sprinkle some water on this. And the background sound is a courtesy of drilling that's happening outside our new office. There is nothing we could do about it. We requested them to stop the drilling, but they are pretty sincere about their work even on Sundays. Okay, this is really hot. Don't try this at home. I mean, yeah, try this at home, but wait for it to cool down. I think some more water would be good. No questions so far? Or no favorite memories of Diwali also so far? What is going on? Okay, if no favorite memories of Diwali, what is your worst memory of Diwali? What is the most horrific Diwali you ever had to spend? Maybe with like people you didn't really like, but you had to put up with because family said so. I don't know. So if you see how this dough is, it's really nice and soft and malleable, and it's nice and warm. This is a good time to put it into the contraption that makes your chaklis. I don't know what it is called in English. Mold maybe? But in Marathi it's called sacha, I think. Maybe. Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. So this is ready to go through. You can do a quick salt check here if you want. Alright, so I have this really fancy one. If you have the traditional one that involved, that round thing on top, that is cool too. You just make it into a nice cylinder and you push it through that. This is now going to go on this baking tray. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this from up close, but this is the most fun part of making a chutney. So, okay, that definitely did not sound appetizing. Round and round you go. So till here, we are pretty much close to how chaklis are made traditionally. Okay, there's not too much difference between what I'm doing now and what maybe your grandmom and mom would do. This is really fun. I remember me and my sister doing this. So my mom would be the one who would be frying, and then my sister and I would be quickly making these and giving them to her. Okay, I think that's enough chutneys. Okay, so this is what they look like. I think we can show it up close on the camera. Okay, those now, what differentiates the ones that you would make from the ones that are being made right now and how they become healthy is we are not going to fry them at all. We're going to bake them. So that thing was my trusted oven is right here. I'm going to put them in. I'm not going to start baking them yet because I have other goodies that I want to make as well and bake it at the same time. Or maybe I will start baking and it will be done. Okay. So around 180 degrees is what we're going to keep it on for. And they should be done in about 25 minutes or so. Okay. So while that's baking, now the next thing we are moving on to is something called as karanji. Now, I come from a community, a Maharashtrian community where these karanjis are made even more differently than what I'm showing you now. I mean, there's so much intricate work that goes into it. Are we making karanji only, right? Okay. So there's so much work that goes into that, like there's layers and layers of. I remember my grandmother used to get ghee for this, and then it used to be layered with ghee and maida, ghee and maida, ghee and maida, and then it would be really these fluffy, flaky, pastry kind of a thing. We are not doing that. I wouldn't recommend that. It's definitely a ready-made bomb for somebody's heart to go bust. What we're doing now is making a very, very healthy version of it. Now we're going to do two things. One is we are going to make the filling, which is coconut, and instead of using jaggery, so typically this filling would be either made with coconut and sugar, coconut and jaggery. So we're not using either coconut. I mean, we're not using either sugar or jaggery. We're using a very, very healthy sweetener. I've used the sweetener in our past baking as well or cooking as well. We're using date paste. How is date paste made? You just soak dates for some time, like even half an hour in water, and then you just grind, like of course remove the seeds and then just grind them in the mixer with this water, and then you have date paste. It's an excellent sweetener that goes very well with a lot of Indian recipes as well as a lot of baked goods. So baked stuff we're going to do in Christmas. We're going to do cakes and cookies and all of that. But dates is an excellent sweetener. What I'm going to do is just quickly take a kadhai, which is not here. I didn't go off anywhere into some other dimension. I just went back into the kitchen. Alright, so I'm going to use this to make a filling. So there's fresh coconut here, freshly grated coconut. And I'm putting in a bowl. And some date paste. Alright. Now, depending how sweet you like it, you can increase the amount of date paste you're adding. And the dates that work best as a sweetener are kimya dates. You know, those dark brown, really deep dark brown, rich looking dates. Those are the best that work as a sweetener. So for people who come to us even with diabetes or when they have blood sugar control problems, we actually give them dates as one of the sweeteners for them to eat. Because what happens with dates is, unlike sugar and jaggery, you're not releasing a sudden burst of sugar into your bloodstream. The sugar in dates is bound with a lot of fiber, it's got a lot of other things, and what we've seen in our work is if you have natural fruit sugars, if you have fruits in the form that they originally are, they don't really impact the blood sugar levels as much as having, let's say, just jaggery, powdered jaggery in your tea. We have an excellent write-up on our blog. If you visit 𝒦𝒏𝒂𝒍𝒊 we have quite a few articles on health, and there's an excellent article on sweeteners, both artificial ones and natural ones. So go read up, because I know a lot of people end up using sugar-free and what is that, Natura, which some chef advertises. I'm not going to take his name, but people end up using that assuming it's healthy, but it really is not. Sucralose can damage your gut. It really impairs your gut-brain axis also. So there are very few artificial sweeteners that are okay for human health in limited quantities. One of them is xylitol, the other one is erythritol. So if you want to read up more about that, if you want to understand which sweetener is really good for you, maybe somebody in your family has diabetes. If they do, bring us to them or bring them to us, either one of those, but we can help reverse their diabetes. But if you really just want to give them something sweet to eat, go read up our article on sweeteners, and you'll really have a lot of information in your hand about what's good and what's not good. Alright. So this is the filling. I think there's a small packet of Everest milk masala, small yellow one. Is it there? No? Okay. It must be to the other place. So generally what I do to add flavor to this filling is, Everest milk masala that you get, so it's got a lot of cardamom, it's got kesar, it's got pista and all of that. I add a pinch of that. It just brings out a really beautiful flavor to all your Indian recipes. Okay, so this gas, I've switched it off, the filling will cool down. In the meantime, we are going to make the outer crust, the thing inside which you're going to stuff your filling. With that, what I have is rice flour, white rice flour. We actually ask people to eat white rice instead of brown rice, and you will be really surprised how come there's a nutritionist who's saying cut down the fiber from brown rice and eat white rice instead. There's a reason for that. I can go check the blog, you'll find out why. But this is white rice flour, and we are using this instead of maida, which is what most people use to make karanji. So instead of maida, instead of even whole wheat flour, if you've done that in the past, we're using white rice flour and oat flour. Why the combination of both? See, oats is really good when it comes to binding and keeping things together. So I like using oat flour wherever I need to replace maida and wheat. And why are we replacing maida and wheat? Well, gluten, it's really harmful, right? So it can harm your gut, it can cause a lot of... there's a book called Grain Brain where Dr. David Perlmutter, who's another functional medicine practitioner, he speaks of how gluten itself impacts brain function and how it's been implicated in autism and ADHD and all of that. So gluten is definitely a no-no. It doesn't really work with human health. It really impairs the gut. It even causes the lining of your gut to kind of get eroded. But it's used in so many recipes and it's really great as an ingredient when you're cooking. So our attempt has always been to find alternatives to wheat, alternatives to maida, so that we can make the food that we really like without having to compromise on health. So here I'm using rice flour and I'm using oat flour as a substitute for highly inflammatory gluten. I'm adding a pinch of, I think, nutmeg powder that's here. And I'm going to use some water to kind of just make this into a nice stiff dough. Guys, any questions? So we've experimented with quinoa in the past as a flour, but then we later found out that quinoa has a lot of saponins, which is another anti-nutrient. What are anti-nutrients? Anti-nutrients are, well, like Antichrist, anti-nutrients are anti-nutrients. They are things that impair your health, that might actually come in the way of good nutrition. They might bind with nutrients, like there are things like phytates and tannins, which bind with iron and prevent your body from absorbing iron. So quinoa has something called as saponins, which again hurt your gut, and that's why we started looking for flours that would really be safest to consume when it comes to plant-based foods. And a lot of people find it weird that we speak of anti-nutrients in plants, but you have to understand this, that plants don't really have defense mechanisms, right? Like if an animal, somebody is going to eat an animal, that animal can run away, or it can claw you, or it can poke you with its horns, or it can bite you. Plants don't have those kind of defense mechanisms. What they do instead is they create a lot of chemical-based toxins when some animal is going to try to eat them, and those toxins are what we term as anti-nutrient, and they are present in plants, right? So they are there. Like you can't negate their presence just by not believing in what I'm saying. The only thing about this dough mix is it doesn't brown as well as maida or whole wheat would, right? So you won't really have nice brown looking karanjis. A fix for that is you could just add some date paste, which will give it some color. Right, so I'm adding some date paste while I'm mixing the dough, and that should give it some color as we are mixing this. The chaklis are looking nice and good. Okay, so this is ready to be rolled. Just make sure it's not too sticky. Nice stiff dough. Alright, and we're going to use I don't know if you can see this part when I'm rolling it. But I'll try to do the filling. There's a problem, there's something that I forgot. So apparently I've overused the ingredients that were allocated to me. You just need to make this a little stiffer. It's okay if I'm out of ingredients here, I'll take them from back. Don't worry about it. Unless one of you finds a way to crawl through this and go and get it. Alright, I think somebody's written something. I don't know, I can't see the screen from where I'm standing. Is it like just about Diwali memories and all of that? Yeah, but what are they? I would like to know. Damn it. Maybe I'll keep the laptop closer to me next time. Alright, this dough is so much better than what had come up first. Okay, so I'm rolling this just to make sure it rolls well. Okay, and it does. How are you guys doing on Insta? I hope we have enough people watching there. Okay. Oh no, Amrita, that's so terrible. Amrita says she was around 4 and that flower pot thing burst on her and then she kind of minorly got injured. Yeah, but that's a memory for life, right? Alright. So that dough, I've rolled it into this circle about the size of a puri. You can make it bigger if you want to. If you want to really have big size karanjis, you can make this circle a little bigger in diameter. And the rest of the process, I'm going to do it on the gas so that you can see what I'm doing. I hope this is clearer. So I hold this up, like 75% of the disc is up in my hand here on the top, and then I'm going to take some of the filling. Okay, and then I'm just going to close this flap, right? So this thing that I have in my hand, I'm going to bring it on top and rest it here. Now this dough has a tendency to tear a little bit. Do not panic if that happens. Water is always a great healer. My mom was extremely amazing at repair jobs, so I've learned a lot of repair work from her. So you can just use some bits and pieces of the dough. Put it up here. Use water, kind of give it a nice finish. And then I have this thing which I have no idea what it's called, neither in Marathi nor in English, but it's got this really nice curved wheel at the end. And what that wheel does is it helps you cut out really nice patterns. I think it's called a pastry wheel in English. Apparently Firki in Marathi. So I use that to cut out a pattern. And this is the karanji. That instead of frying this time, now we've made quite a few swaps here to make it healthy, right? So instead of using wheat, we use rice flour and oat flour as the outer covering. Instead of using sugar or jaggery, we use dates inside as a sweetener. And then instead of frying it again, instead of deep frying it in oil, we're going to put it down for baking. So I'm going to keep this aside because I want to bake this together with the shankarpali which we're making next. And the chaklis are also baking in here. I don't want the smell to kind of go on each other. The chaklis kind of look done also, so I'm switching off the heat. So I'm keeping this here. We're going to move on to the next one, which is making our shankarpali, and then we'll bake both of them together. Do you have an empty plate that I can use? Keep this in there. Okay. This here. Let's do the shankarpali. Again, for the shankarpali, most times people make it with maida and sugar or jaggery. We're just going to use the same combo that I used earlier, oat flour and rice flour. And then again here you could use flavors. So I once tried making vanilla shankarpali and it had turned out really well. They were like tiny little diamond cookies. I'm using nutmeg. You could use elaichi. You could use kesar. You could use that same milk masala that I spoke of earlier, the 𝒍𝒐𝒔𝒊𝒕𝒆 one, which has so many nice flavors in it. So you could use any of that. This one is really simple. Instead of using sugar or jaggery, we're going to use a whole lot of date paste here. Yeah, so you can use the lychee, cardamom, any of those things. So again, when we send out the recipe booklet, right, we'll have all of these details mentioned here. You don't have to stick to exactly what I'm doing here. All that I'm showing is how to take an unhealthy recipe and make it really healthy while you don't miss out on your traditional local food, because food is culture too. And problem of quantity solved. Alright, so mix it into a nice dough. You wouldn't really need too much water here because the date paste is going to give you moisture. And if you use kimya dates, that's going to give you really nice dark color as well. Now in this recipe, if you wanted to avoid date paste, you could also use erythritol or xylitol, which is one of the artificial sweeteners that we're kind of okay with. Questions? What will be the proportion of rice and oat flour? So right now I'm using kind of 50-50, but like I said, if you leave your email ID in the comments, if you've not registered for this event on our Facebook page, just leave your email ID in the comments so that we can send you the recipe booklet, which will actually have exact quantities, proportions, even links, right? Like I'm speaking of xylitol and erythritol. If you want to buy it, then we put in links also from where you can procure it. And in this recipe, I'm adding a little bit of ghee so that the shankarpalis are not like too dry and they're not very hard and brittle, because that's no fun to eat them like that. So I add a little ghee in this just so that they are slightly not soft, but they just have better texture. And ghee is okay, right? Good quality organic ghee from cows that have not been fed antibiotics and hormones is absolutely okay to eat. Saturated fat is not bad. Saturated fat does not cause heart disease. I myself, until early this year, we used to be plant-based and we used to promote eating only plant-based foods. And then once we learned more and understood human health even more, we realized that the entire animal fat, saturated fat is bad for your health is a really bad paradigm that doesn't help any human beings. So animal fat is good for health, ghee is good for health. But again, there's a slight caveat there, right? So if you're eating a lot of refined carbohydrates and carbohydrate-rich food, and then you're also eating a lot of fat, that's not such a great idea. So you either choose primarily fat-based food with protein, or you choose a carb-based diet with protein. Alright, so this dough again is ready to roll. Alright, so don't make this too thin, because they'll just like become too hard and crisp if you make them thin, because we are not frying them, we are baking them. So you don't want papads, right? You want shankarpali. So it's about 1/8 of an inch thick, this thing. And now what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to use this magic spoon, which is called firki in Marathi and a pastry wheel in English. And then I'm going to use it to cut out tiny little diamonds. So there's another contraption that can be used for this, which is this. So you can just roll it like that and roll it like that, and then you'll have your diamonds ready. I just have more fun with this. And like how we made sweet ones, you could make savory ones as well. You could add salt and you could add ajwain and jeera and any of those spices, and you could really have yummy savory shankarpalis as well. So this is what it's looking now, like it's been cut into these diamond shapes. Tiny diamond. Okay. And we're going to bake this and the karanji together. They're going to bake while we make the besan ka laddus. Alright. Our chaklis are baked and done here. Let's keep them here while we bake. Just separate them out. They won't really stick because it's not a sticky dough that we made. And then keep in the karanji as well. So these two go into the oven now. Alright? Okay. And I want to bake them again. Again, the time and the temperature is something that we'll send in the recipe document. So please make sure you. And the chaklis are being eaten backstage. I don't know if I can show you like what it looks like because they're gone before we have to start showing that. Alright, so now we're making the besan ka laddus. Again, one simple swap here is the sugar or the jaggery itself. Besan on its own is okay, especially if you're eating organic besan, it's okay. And alright, our lab decided that it's enough of heat for it. Okay, straight. So take a nice thick bottom kadai, and if you notice I'm only using steel utensils, there's a reason for that. Non-stick is loaded with toxins. When you heat a non-stick tawa or a kadai or any utensil, what happens is it starts releasing carcinogenic compounds into your food, into your atmosphere, and you don't really want carcinogenic compounds coming in from your utensils. Aluminium has a tendency to leach into food. Alright, this guy doesn't want to be here, so he's going to say bye bye. Bye bye. Aluminium is going to leach into your food, and it's been shown to, in fact, compete with zinc in your cells. So you could become zinc deficient if you have too much aluminium coming in from your food. Besides which, even Alzheimer's, there is a hypothesis which says that aluminium could be one of the reasons why Alzheimer's also gets triggered in the brain. So aluminium is a definite no-no. Non-stick cookware is a definite no-no. What is left is good quality steel. That's why we use only steel, and anybody who comes to us to thrive, right? Like, they could come to us with any health condition, but one of the things we do is we tell them that switch to using only stainless steel as your cookware because we don't want unhealthy stuff going into your body. Alright, now ta-da, we're going to use ghee for our besan laddus. A little bit of indulgence, but like I said, ghee is not really unhealthy. So in the heated kadai we have ghee. And then we have this besan, chana flour, chickpea flour, which we are going to use to make our besan ka laddus. And you could make these laddus with any other flour also. So you could use like millet flours, you could use ragi flour, you could use bajra flour, you could use those flours and make the same kind of laddus. So once the ghee is kind of heated up, I'm adding besan there. You can hear those crunches, right? People are eating chaklis. Every single time. The minute the food is out here and it goes backstage, it gets eaten up. So besan takes its own time to get roasted well. There's no point hurrying it. Like I said, the best food gets cooked when it's cooked slowly. We're going to give this time. and it slowly starts changing color. So from this light yellow thing, it's now becoming darker yellow, and then slowly it will become slightly brownish. That's when you know it's done. Again, for this recipe, you could use xylitol to sweeten it. The only thing is xylitol doesn't really bind things. It doesn't make things stick. So it's better in a recipe where there's something else that's creating the binding. So you could use some xylitol and some of the other sweetener that we're actually using in this. Any guesses to what is the sweetener we're using in this? Come on! Like some guesswork would be good. What age did you first start cooking? Amrita, I know you're a great cook. What age did you first start cooking? Amrita actually holds classes for Indian food in Basel in Switzerland. And I think she's doing phenomenal food there. So at what age did you start cooking, Amrita? Oh, we forgot to send this on the Thrive Tribe, right? Our Telegram. Right? You sent? Okay, good. Do you think it's a good idea to burst crackers for Diwali? My personal opinion is no, because you end up releasing so many toxins into the air, and then everybody gets sick with that. And then if you, now though in COVID zamana, even the smallest itch in your throat will be like corona, 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 right? So don't do things that will make your respiratory health worse and that will make you go into a quarantine or something like that. I don't deny the virus, there is a virus for sure. But the way the media represents all that is happening in the world is like such a scam. You know, what we've seen from all the data we've analyzed and the people who actually within our tribe also when they got tested positive for COVID, the ones who have insulin resistance, the ones who have vitamin D deficiency across the world are the ones who really have the worst outcomes. If you don't have either of these, you actually, it just passes through like a flu virus, right? Yes, you'll have fever, you'll have body ache, you'll have chills, but 3-4 days of that and you'll be back on your feet. But the people who are really poor with poor metabolic health, when I speak of insulin resistance and high BP and all of that, they are the ones who bear the brunt of the virus because their body just cannot deal with this new pathogen. And then when they're taken away to hospital and they put on compulsory ventilators, that's when things really go south. So if you make sure your internal health is good and you basically supplement with things like zinc and vitamin D and make sure the B vitamin status is good and you don't have insulin resistance, you'll get a flu, you'll be at home for 3-4 days, you'll have loved ones taking care of you and then you'll be fine after that. Don't go get tested for COVID, okay? Like don't, because like if the numbers go up, which like what a lot of media articles are doing now, they're starting to talk about how the festival season can increase cases because people are meeting and stuff like that. They might bring down a next lockdown, okay? So there's a very high possibility that the government might just insist on doing another lockdown, which none of us want. It's the last thing we should be doing. It's basically taking away our freedom and crashing the entire economy. So get your internal health fixed. Don't be afraid of a virus. And don't burst crackers because that's going to just make it really bad for everyone. And say no to the lockdown when it happens. Okay. While I speak so much, the basin is still not brown. Maybe I should increase the heat. This spot in the kitchen right now is feeling like Bombay. hot and it's humid. And it is how Bombay was when I was there yesterday. Okay, so I'm turning off the heat because it is smelling like roasted besan now. We're going to wait for it to cool down a little bit, or maybe I can take it in another plate and do this. Because I don't want to add honey to a really hot kadai. The thing about honey is you get all benefits from honey when it's in its raw pasteurized form. Raw unpasteurized form when it's not heated. Because what heating does is it destroys a lot of the enzymes that might be there in honey that make it so good for you. So raw organic honey is what you should have, and honey is really great for so many things. Like even if you have a sore throat, we just like put honey in warm water and have it, or you just like boil a little bit of turmeric in water and then add honey to it and have it. You'll see that your throat feels so much better. So this is the roasted besan with ghee, and then we're adding a little honey to it. And I keep experimenting with different honey brands. I never get tired of tasting different honey. This one is organic honey. It's raw. So I'm just adding some honey to this. You have to be careful with this one because if you add too much honey, I know I'm off camera, I'm going to come back to the center. But if you add too much honey, then you're going to have a very runny besan ka dough. Okay, so just add a little at a time, check for sweetness. I'm using a spoon to mix it because it's really hot. You can allow it to cool down a little bit and then mix the honey with it. This needs to cool down before I can do anything sensible with it. And that's it. Nice round besan laddu is ready. I have to check for sweetness. I think a little more honey would be good. If you have almonds or if you have pistachios or if you have kesar or something like that, you can use that as well to decorate this and make it look good. You guys have to stop eating behind the scenes. Alright, so our besan laddus are ready. Without sugar, without jaggery, just honey. And here you go. So I'm going to now arrange all the stuff we made. So earlier today we actually made some of the stuff beforehand because we didn't know how long it will take to bake and if we had enough time during the show itself to show you what it looks like. So I'm going to keep the besan laddus here as well, and then you can see how gorgeous this looks. Look at this. All the goodies we made today are right here. Alright, so we're bringing it closer to the camera. Yeah. And maybe you can tilt it a little so because it's not visible. Yeah, right. All the goodies right there. You guys on Insta can also see it. So that's the stuff we made today. What's the time? Is it 4?
So,
Super! Like on the dot. I am so proud of myself. Any questions? If you guys are watching this later, if you have any questions, please reach out to us. Go to the website 𝒦𝒏𝒂𝒂𝒍𝒊. Our number is right there. It's WhatsApp enabled, so you can just ping on WhatsApp and you can ask a question. And the next cooking event, we're going to do breads. We're going to do breads without wheat. So we're going to do keto breads. So if you're somebody who's following a keto diet and you miss bread terribly, we're going to teach you how to make a keto bread. And if you're just a person who wants to avoid gluten, we're going to teach you how to make a gluten-free bread as well with regular grains. So come in for that. That's end of November, I think. And then December, we're going to do a complete Christmas baking event. So cookies and cakes and gingerbread men and stuff like that. But I love doing these shows because I love cooking. And then we get to eat all the things that we've made. So before we sign off and say bye-bye, I just like the entire team to come. I don't know if there's enough space here, but these are the guys who are behind the scenes, eating stuff and passing your comments. That's Team Thrive, like half of Team Thrive. Come. I'm going to scoot in here so that Suyash also can come in. And Suyash is doing his trademark this pose. So that's all of us, and from all of us, thank you so much for being here. We love doing our cooking shows, and then if you have any health problems, if you're afraid of COVID, if you have diabetes, if you don't know how to fix it, if you're trying to lose weight, reach out to us, and we really are good at what we do. All right? Bye-bye. Thank you so much for being here. We just have to end the live stream. Do you want to download the video so that we can use it?